Good evening and welcome to the 18th installment of my reading of S. Morgenstern's classic, The Princess Bride. "You're very strong, Fezzik," his father said. Actually, this is not strictly true. What his father meant was, "You're very strong, Fezzik." What came out was more like this. Ever since the milkman had wired his jaws together, all he could manage was the letter Z. But he had a very expressive face, and his wife understood him perfectly. "He says you're very strong, Fezzik."
"I thought I was,"
Fezzik answered.
"Last year, I hit a tree once when I was very mad. I knocked it down. It was a small tree, but still, I figured that it had to mean something."
"He says he's giving up being a carpenter, Fezzik."
"Oh no," Fezzik said. "You'll be all well soon, Daddy. The milkman practically promised me."
"He wants to give up being a carpenter, Fezzik."
"But what will he do?"
Fezzik's mother answered this one herself. She and her husband had been up half the night agreeing on the decision. "He's going to be your manager, Fezzik. Fighting is Turkey's national sport. We're all going to be rich and famous."
"But Mommy, Daddy, I don't like fighting."
Fezzik's father reached out and gently patted his son's knee. He said. "It's going to be wonderful," his mother translated. Fezzik only burst into tears. They had his first professional match in the village of Sandiki on a steaming hot Sunday. Fezzik's parents had a terrible time getting him into the ring. They were absolutely confident of victory because they had worked very hard. They had taught Fezzik for 3 solid years before they mutually agreed that he was ready. Fezzik's father handled tactics and ring strategy, while his mother was more in charge of diet and training, and they had never been happier. Fezzik had never been more miserable. He was scared and frightened and terrified, all rolled into one. No matter how they reassured him, he refused to enter the arena. Because he knew something. Even though outside he looked 20, and his mustache was already coming in quite nicely, inside he was still this 9-year-old who liked rhyming things.
"No," he said. I won't, and you can't make me."
"After all we've slaved for these 3 years," his father said. His jaw was almost as good as new now.
"He'll hurt me,"
Fezzik said. "Life is pain," his mother said. "Anybody that says different is selling something."
"Please, I'm not ready. I forget the holds. I'm not graceful and I fall down a lot. It's true."
It was. Their only real fear was, were they rushing him? "When the going gets tough, the tough get going," Fezzik's mother said. "Get going, Fezzik," his father said. Fezzik stood his ground. "Listen, we're not going to threaten you," Fezzik's parents said, more or less together. "We all care for each other too much to pull any of that stuff. If you don't want to fight, nobody's going to force you. We'll just leave you alone forever." Fezzik's picture of hell was being left alone forever. He had told them that when he was 5. They marched into the arena then to face the champion of Sandiki, who had been champion for 11 years, since he was 24. He was very graceful and wide and stood 6 feet in height, only half a foot less than Fezzik. Fezzik didn't stand a chance. He was too clumsy. He kept falling down or getting his holds on backward, so they weren't holds at all. The champion of Sandiki toyed with him. Fezzik kept getting thrown down, or falling down, or tumbling down, or stumbling down. He always got up and tried again. The champion of Sandiki was much too fast for him, and too clever, and much, much too experienced. The crowd laughed and ate baklava and enjoyed the whole spectacle, until Fezzik got his arms around the champion of Sandiki. The crowd grew very quiet then. Fezzik lifted him up. No noise. Fezzik squeezed. And squeezed. That's enough now, Fezzik said. Fezzik laid the other man down.
Thank you, he said. You are a wonderful fighter, and I was lucky.
The ex-champion of Sandiki kind of grunted. Raise your hands, you're the winner, his mother reminded. Fezzik stood there in the middle of the ring with his hands raised. Boo! Said the crowd. Animal! Ape! Gorilla! Boo! They did not linger long in Sandiki. As a matter of fact, it wasn't very safe for them to linger on anywhere. They fought the champion of Isper. Boo! The champion of Samal. Boo! They fought in Bolu. They fought in Zile. Boo! I don't care what anybody says, Fezzik's mother told him one winter afternoon. You're my son, and you're wonderful. It was gray and dark, and they were hot-footing out of Constantinople just as fast as they could because Fezzik had just demolished their champion before most of the crowd was even seated.
I'm not wonderful,
Fezzik said.
They're right to insult me. I'm too big. Whenever I fight, it looks like I'm picking on somebody.
Maybe, Fezzik's father began a little hesitantly. Maybe, Fezzik, if you just possibly, sort of lose a few fights, they might not yell at us too much. The wife whirled on the husband. The boy is 11 and already you want him to throw fights? Nothing like that. No, don't get all excited, but maybe if he looked like he was suffering a little, they'd let up on us.
I'm suffering,
Fezzik said. He was. Well, show it a little more.
I'll try, Daddy.
That's a good boy.
I can't help being strong. It's not my fault. I don't even exercise.
I think it's time to head for Greece, Fezzik's father said then. We've beaten everyone in Turkey who will fight us, and athletics began in Greece. No one appreciates talent like the Greeks.
I hate it when they go boo,
Fezzik said. He did. Now his private picture of hell was being left alone, with everybody going boo at him forever. They'll love you in Greece, Fezzik's mother said. They fought in Greece. Arg! Arg! Was Greek for boo. Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Romania. Boo! They tried the Orient, the Jiu-Jitsu champion of Korea, the Karate champion of Siam, the Kung Fu champion of all India. See my previous note on ARG. In Mongolia, his parents died. We've done everything we can for you, Fezzik. Good luck, they said, and they were gone. It was a terrible thing, a plague that swept everything before it. Fezzik would have died too, only naturally he never got sick. Alone, he continued on, across the Gobi Desert, hitching rides sometimes with passing caravans. And it was there that he learned how to make them stop booing. Fight groups. Oh, by the way, number one rule of fight groups, you never talk about them. Anyway, sorry. It all began in a caravan on the Gobi, when the caravan head said, I'll bet my camel drivers can take you. There were only 3 of them, so Fezzik said, Fine. He'd try, and he did, and he won, naturally. And everybody seemed happy. Fezzik was thrilled. He never fought just one person again if it was possible. For a while he traveled from place to place battling gangs for local charities. But his business head was never much, and besides, doing things alone was even less appealing to him now that he was into his late teens than it had been before. He joined a traveling circus. All the other performers grumbled at him because they said he was eating more than his share of the food. So he stayed pretty much to himself except when it came to his work. But then, one night when Fezzik had just turned 20, he got the shock of his life. The booing was back. Again, he could not believe it. He had just squeezed half a dozen men into submission, cracked the heads of a half dozen more. What did they want from him? The truth was simply this. He had gotten too strong. He would never measure himself, but everybody whispered that he must be over 7 feet tall, and he would never step on a scale, but people claimed he weighed 400 pounds. And not only that, he was quick now. All the years of experience had made him almost inhuman. He knew all the tricks, could counter all the holds. Animal! Ape! Gorilla! Boo! That night, alone in his tent, Fezzik wept. He was a freak. Speak. He still loved rhymes. A two-eyed cyclops. Eye drops. Like the tears that were dropping now, dropping from his half-closed eyes. By the next morning, he had gotten control of himself. At least he still had his circus friends around him. That week, the circus fired him. The crowds were booing them now, too, and the fat lady threatened to walk out, and the midgets were fuming, and that was it for Fezzik. This was in the middle of Greenland. And as everybody knows, Greenland then was the loneliest place on the earth. And in Greenland, there is one person for every 20 square miles of real estate. Probably the circus was pretty stupid taking a booking there, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Fezzik was alone. In the loneliest place in the world. Just sitting there, on a rock, watching the circus pull away. He was still sitting there the next day when Vizzini, the Sicilian, found him. Vizzini flattered him, promised to keep the booze away, and Vizzini needed Fezzik. But not half as much as Fezzik needed Vizzini. As long as Vizzini was around, you couldn't be alone. Whatever Vizzini said, Fezzik did. And if that meant crushing the head of the man in black, so be it. Thanks for reading with me tonight. We'll see you tomorrow.